In our city, there are girls and women who have been let down by all the systems of society that should have been there. Family, friends, community, health systems, legal system, government. Yet they struggle, often on their own, trying to find dignity and life with meaning. Our next guest wondered what she could do to help. She got together with other women to host a series of evenings called Beauty Nights. There they find hairstyles, manicures, pedicures, acupuncture, massage, touch, to remind their sisters that they belong. She's brought human compassion and love to lives that too often feel unloved. Please welcome Caroline MacGillivray.
Hunger, homelessness, addiction, mental health, violence, extreme poverty. These are some of the things that the women I work with face on a day-to-day basis. I didn't start out this way. When I was a kid, and if you asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would have told you I wanted to be a movie star. I would have told you I wanted to be on Broadway and wanted to be a musical theater actress. But I've been very, very lucky to be able to work with the women I do and do the kind of work I do. And it was originally supposed to be something I was going to do when I was rich and famous from acting. So I wasn't expecting to be able to start to do it before the age of 30. But as I mentioned, I've been incredibly lucky in my life, and I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity. When I finished theater school, my best friend from theater school started working for a transition home for survival sex trade workers who were trying to get off the street. And she found when we go out for dinner with friends, people were quite judgmental. This is before the Robert Pickton case. And people really didn't understand, where there wasn't a lot of media. It was just, oh, they're a bunch of prostitutes. They're a bunch of addicts. Why would anybody want to help them? And so what she did was she wrote a script about a girl who waked up on her 19th birthday after overdosing on crack. And she called me and she said, hey, Caroline, could you do me a huge favor and play this young girl from the age of 14 to 19, where she goes from a middle-class suburban girl to a downtown east side sex trade worker drug user? And I said, of course. And so I started volunteering in the downtown east side for primarily selfish reasons. I was doing it for research. So I started volunteering at one of the shelters. And one night when I came in, I found one of the women who came in asked me what it was like to be a kid. And in hindsight, it was probably because I was still looking like I was about 15 years old in my late 20s. But she asked me, what's it like to be a kid? And I asked her what she meant. She said, well, when I was 4, my dad was sleeping with me. By the time I was 6, he was selling me. And by the time I was 10, I'd been in and out of so many foster homes it was safer on the street. I got to know this woman quite well. I'll just call her Jay for confidentiality's sake. And she was in her early 30s. She had HIV, endometriosis, and she was on wait list to get her second ovary removed because of ovarian cancer. And as I continued to get to know her, as I volunteered at that soup kitchen, a shelter, we started hanging out, and she started introducing me to people in the neighborhood. And one night, the two of us were there. It was almost 17 years ago now, which is hard to believe. It was hot. There weren't very many women in. And another woman came in who had dealt with extreme trauma. Didn't want to eat, didn't want to sleep. When I finally asked the obvious question, what do you want? She said, I just want to feel clean. So I said, okay. I got her a towel. She went and had a shower. And afterwards, we tried to find clothing that didn't have any body fluids on it. So we went through the donation bin and found a curling iron that was at the bottom of the pile. And she asked, can I borrow this? And I said, of course. When it got warm enough to curl her hair, she realized that her arm was so battered she couldn't quite get her arm up. And she looked like she was going to start to cry. And I could tell she didn't really want to cry because she'd kind of had so many bad things happen to her that she just wanted to hold on to that last semblance of control. So I think I did what anybody would do. I just asked, would you like me to do your hair for you? And she said, really? And she actually looked at me for the first time that night. And she said, okay. So after that, we started laughing a lot because I was really bad at doing her hair. There were pieces that were flipping like a 1950s flip. There were other pieces that looked like a really bad spiral perm, and those of you who grew up during the 80s know what I'm talking about. But by the end of it, she ended up giving me a huge hug, and she said, thank you for making me feel human. And that got me thinking about it a lot when I went home that night. And organically, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but organically everything just kept going. Where the next time I showed up to volunteer, more and more women started asking me to do their hair and makeup. And so I spoke to the volunteer coordinator and asked maybe I could bring in friends who could do hair and makeup. And I noticed as we did it, there was a huge difference. When women felt good about themselves, they'd come into the literacy program to show off their nails. They'd go and visit the street nurses and show off their haircuts, but they'd also ask a health-related question. And people started accessing services that they hadn't gone near before because of feeling good about themselves. I honestly believe, and maybe this is really naive of me after 17 years of doing this, but I really believe if you feel good about yourself, you start believing that change is possible. And when you're filled up with that hope and joy, the world's a much more amazing place. And I think all of us feel that way. I think that's why the beauty industry is a really big one, as is the wellness industry. We just want to feel good. We want to feel respected. We don't want to feel isolated. And through the work we've been doing through Beauty Night, I've been very, very lucky to be working with some incredible people to bring dignity to so many people. And I'm going to share one last story because not everybody is a survival sex worker, even though many of our sisters are. There are other seniors down there. One of my seniors had stopped being able to walk very well. And we thought it was because of mobility issues because she was in her 80s. Turned out it was because of her toenails, which if you look at my hand, if it was at the end of a knuckle, that was a toe. This was all nail. So we ended up getting support and sponsorship to get her nails clipped because when they get that long, you need somebody who's a specialist in that. And that year, we ended up doing a fashion show to raise money, and I asked her to model for us. And when it was her turn to model, she was so excited, and she just strutted across the stage. She just really owned it. And it got to the point she started to dance. And it was, I swear to God, it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. And I started to cry, partly because as a producer, I was like, oh my gosh, she's on stage way too long. And the other part is because she wasn't able to do it before. So I just want to encourage all of you, as my time is up and I should be getting off the stage too, that to really think about what do you like to do and open yourselves up to the possibility of what makes you feel good, because maybe by just doing what you feel good about doing can really make a difference in somebody else's life. Thank you.